Recently, I visited my grandmother. She is getting older and we don't see each other as often as we did before. Work and life's responsibilities cut my free time quite short, but I still enjoy the little time we have. We talked for some time, but suddenly she asked me a question. Did I ever show you our family's papers from the war? And by war she meant World War II. She herself was born at the end of it, but of course felt its aftershock of the people it created. One of these people was of course her father. She then brought in a folder where I found two interesting documents I'd like to share with you. Document 1 has quite a recognizable stamp on it, but the question is, what's actually the content? Well, this is actually a marriage certificate. The stamp on here is of course from the old government, and while it looks strange from today's eyes, it completely makes sense that the government logos are used in official documents. But this is just one document. I think the second one is much more interesting, because it details what happened to my great-grandfather after the war. So this is how we will do this. I will read the passages in German and give you a translation, as well as historical contextualization. But without further ado, let's jump right in. Our story starts in 1906, when my great-grandfather was born in a place called Breslau, Prussia, which after World War II was put under Poland's control, meaning that all of his family and friends from before were never to be seen again, since all Germans living there were driven out. But I'm going too far into the future here, let's stay on the timeline. When the First World War started in 1914, he was too young for military service, and with Germany's loss, he was not drafted here. But of course his father was in the army, and it was clear that an industrialized war, like World War I, mustn't repeat itself. And after the November Revolution and the end of the German Empire, the Kaiserreich, it was very, very clear. Germany and its people cannot prosper under fascism and monarchy. Only democracy can guarantee that the will of the people will be heard and can prevent another war. This is what made him very politicized at a young age, in the way of a social democracy, classic worker rights politics. And this is what set up the stage for the document, which was created after the Second World War. But let me read it. B. war vor 1933 führendes Mitglied im Reichsbanner und als Antifaschist bekannt. B. wurde wegen seiner antifaschistischen Einstellung am 16.09.1933 verhaftet und bis Ende März 1934 in der Haftanstalt Breslau und im Konzentrationslager Oranienburg festgehalten. Okay, now in English. So, the first sentence tells us that he was a leading member of a group called the Reichsbanner. But what is the Reichsbanner? It may sound different, but the Reichsbanner was actually a collection of social democrats that were against the radicalization that was happening in Germany. A big part of its assembly were veterans from World War I that knew the horrors of war and realized what was happening in the current rise of fascism. And they were not only against fascism, but they were also against the monarchists and the communists, which is kinda based. Also, the atmosphere on the streets changed a lot. The SA, or Sturmabteilung, started getting more aggressive against the regime's opponents, and the Schutzbanner was one of the organizations that actually resisted, forming its own fighting groups against the street terror that was happening to intimidate any potential resistance. And while this worked for some time, in the end the Schutzbanner was forbidden and its members were jailed, or even worse. Interestingly, after the war, in 1952, the Reichsbanner reformed, although with much lesser numbers, and they never really got their relevancy back. But even now, the Reichsbanner is still an active group that still upholds their call for democratic values. They still do debates with politicians and do educational and memorial work. I'll link their page in the description, so if you want to see what they're currently up to, feel free to check it out. But let's get back to my great-grandfather. The next sentence tells us that he was jailed because of his anti-fascist ethos. At first in a jail in Breslau, and after that in the concentration camp Oranienburg. It was the first concentration camp in Prussia, and had, like every other concentration camps, a pretty harsh treatment of its prisoners. He was in prison for 6 months, from September 33 to March 34. This was actually confirmed by the government. Furthermore, it says the following. Ferner gibt B. an, dass kurze Zeit nach der Machtübernahme von SS- und SA-Leuten überfallen und misshandelt worden war. Diese Angaben erscheinen nach Lage der Dinge glaubhaft, können aber nicht durch Zeugen bewiesen werden. This means that after the forceful takeover, also called the Machtübernahme, of the NSDAP in 1933, he was ambushed by SS and SA members and was violently beaten. The thing is, there is no bookkeeping about this, so it couldn't be proven in a document, but was so plausible regarding his political affiliations that it was accepted as true. But after reading so much of this document, what is it even about? Well, after the Second World War ended, the German state implemented reimbursements for people who were victims of the Nazi regime. And for his beatings and the time in prison, he got 1050 German mark, which doesn't sound like too much, and realistically is a couple of €1,000 now. So not too much, but at least it's something, right? And while this sounds like a finished story now, in my opinion it leaves out a couple of important facts that we especially now should think about. My great-grandfather was a known anti-fascist and survived a concentration camp. So he didn't fight in the war, right? Well, that would be nice, but wasn't true. Just because you were opposed to the war didn't mean that they didn't send you out to the front lines. I think this is still a very valid thought you should have right now. He was still forced to fight. And trust me, they did send their political opponents to the worst battle zones. He himself fought on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union and was even imprisoned. According to my grandmother, her father never talked to her about that because it must have been quite horrible for him, so I can't give you any information on that. But he also managed to escape that, with some painful but not deadly bullet wounds, but he was certainly unable to fight further. In the end, there is one more story my grandmother told me. Her father, unable to fight, was supposed to go on an escape ship together with civilians to avoid getting overrun by the Red Army. He still was wounded and weakened from imprisonment, so he drank schnapps to numb the pain. He then fell asleep before the ship departed, and when he woke up, everyone was gone. The ship left without him. Well, he missed his opportunity to escape, but quickly realized he got very lucky. The ship he was supposed to be on was the Wilhelm Gustloff, which was destroyed by a Soviet torpedo, killing about 7,000 people, depending on the source you look at. I cannot confirm the story, and it sounds like a story you would hear from multiple people, but I still wanted it to be included. But honestly, taking a look at these documents was pretty fascinating. I think every German family has a story about that time, and I think we got away pretty well. But that's also just one side of the family. Maybe the other half wasn't as good. We'll never know since there is no document about that. But that's it for this video. I honestly found these documents very fascinating, so I wanted to share them. And if you like this kind of stuff, then I would not recommend you to follow my channel. Stuff like this will never occur again, but I just really wanted to share this because I found it so interesting. But still, I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next video. Bye!